reformation, or redemption? A man who was once sentenced to life in prison without parole just walked across the stage to accept his degree from the Gonzaga Law School. At the age of 14, Jeremiah Bourgeois shot and killed someone. He thought he'd spend the rest of his life behind bars until the pendulum of law swung in his favor. Our Kirsten O'Connor reports.
This interactive mural at the Karl Maxey Center tells the story of dozens of people from the East Central community. This man in the top right of the mural, Jeremiah Bourgeois, spent 27 years in prison. He tells me it's still surreal to be here in Spokane.
Up until age 10, it was a really idyllic life, especially for an African-American family in the 1980s.
A kid who loved to dance, spend summers outside, and attend birthday parties with his friends. Jeremiah Bourgeois grew up near Seattle.
By 13 years old, I had ran away from home and was on the streets.
As a young teen, his parents divorced, and the adults he turned to on the streets were drug dealers who lured him into a life of crime.
Unfortunately, I had a gun supplied by some adult, and I opened fire in that store and unfortunately killed one and wounded another. And for that, I was meant to die in prison, and that's what they sentenced me to.
Sentenced to life in prison without parole as a 14-year-old, Jeremiah says he didn't understand what that meant until he befriended another teen in prison. That friend showed him the meaning of life.
He committed suicide. And I just knew I was either going to have to find a way to live in prison and find something of value to keep going, or I was going to end up like him.
The prison library became his life.
I started studying. I started using whatever money I got for whatever and using that money to buy books and take correspondence courses. And it took over 10 years, but I cobbled together a bachelor's degree and learned enough of the law to start publishing Walk and Find.
Years went by, decades changed, and so did the law. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled to put an end to life sentences for juveniles. That changed again in 2016.
But you know, when it comes to crime and punishment, pendulums swing. I was given a life without parole sentence for crimes I committed when I was 14 because the pendulum was one way.
You look the same!
I was released because the pendulum went another way.
Just 7 months later, he took his first steps of his new life at Gonzaga University as a law student, where he met a new friend, Dean Jacob Brooksby.
His life experience in the context of any class that we had was just so different than most of our students who maybe have worked a little bit, but certainly haven't spent nearly 6 years in solitary confinement.
Jeremiah says his prison time didn't prepare him for his new life.
Law school was more difficult than my prison sentence.
The stress and struggles of law school took its toll, and depression haunted him.
And I had the resources to do something about it, and the will. Absent, though, any of those three, no, I wouldn't have finished law school, I wouldn't be a law clerk, and I wouldn't be a gubernatorial appointee.
He calls it a mystery, not a miracle, that his life has led to this stage.
This past commencement, the proudest moment for me was seeing JJ get his diploma.
As a graduate and law clerk, Jeremiah's work continues as a member of the Sentencing Guidelines Commission by Governor Jay Inslee and a volunteer for If You Could Save Just One in Spokane.
There's still young people out here in this miles from here who are on the same path. And we hear about them every day. We see them on the news all the time, and they're still going to prison. And so, you know, unfortunately, it's not unique anymore.
Well, now Jeremiah says his plans are to go to work and to try to be a good person. His story is so inspirational. You can read more about the essays he published while incarcerated. His book is called The Extraordinary Ordinary Prisoner. Pretty remarkable.